Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special episode for you today. On the podcast, I have brought you none other than a pangolin conservation specialist, Lauren Ayres. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. Hi.
She focuses on saving the pangolins all over the world, breaking into warehouses at gunpoint and stealing them, taking them to a pangolin farm, and making a better life for them.
I work with an organization called Global Conservation Force, kind of a multifaceted organization that's leading the fight against wildlife trafficking.
Is there any truth, really, to pangolins being a possible cause of the coronavirus?
Well, yes and no. So there has been no definitive studies put out that say where exactly SARS-CoV-2, or what we know now as the coronavirus, we don't know where it originated.
And is this a zoonotic disease? It definitely was transmitted from animals.
Yes, 100%. So there's been a lot of conspiracy theories out there about, did it get created in a lab, and was it released on purpose, and all this stuff? And no. So what we do know about coronavirus, or SARS-CoV-2, which is what we have right now, is that it was a natural mutation from an animal origin. Now, the virus has been pretty much isolated to a population in bats. The horseshoe bat is in China, so they're pretty sure that it came from those bats. We're not exactly sure the whole method of transmission, or if there was two different coronaviruses that combined in order to get what we have going on in humans right now. It's all kind of up in the air. What we do know is that there are wet markets in a lot of areas of the world. It's not just China, where you have a lot of different animals coming in, wild animals that normally wouldn't have contact with each other. So if you have a bat that lives in a cave or, roosts up high, not necessarily going to come in contact with an animal like a pangolin, which is a ground-dwelling animal primarily. But if you have them in a wet market where you have them in kind of crowded cages that are stacked on top of one another, you're going to have a lot more disease transfer between animals that necessarily wouldn't happen out in the wild. In addition, kind of the idea behind a wet market, the reason it's a wet market is because the animals are live there. So they're being slaughtered on site, which I don't know if that's necessarily the etiology of the name wet market, but in my mind, I just think like wet is kind of
I just pictured moisture. Like it was just like kind of a lot of,
I don't know,
like a petri dish of just like a lot of fluids.
Yeah. So someone might not have even eaten said animal. It could have just been, as they butchered it, a splash of blood landed in their eye on accident, and there we go. The wet market, I think, is a very good assumption as to where it originated because of past viruses that have originated in wet markets.
You were saying that like exotic animal trafficking is a big cause of it, like a way to avoid pandemics like this is animals that normally don't come into contact or being in contact, and this is creating more of this. So that could be, if it continues to happen and go down, years from now where it's keeps growing, is there going to be more chances of this kind of thing happening?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, there's a lot of social issues that go into banning wet markets or banning, certain animals from consumption. But we do know that congregating them in wet markets, especially animals that are coming from all over the world into one market, is not good in terms of the health of the animals as well as us. So we saw SARS in 2002, which was technically SARS-CoV-1. SARS virus was originated in a wet market, and it was originally a bat virus that passed to an animal called a civet, which a lot of people describe them as civet cats, but they're actually not cats at all. They're like little weaselly creatures. And people consumed civets, and that is where SARS from 2002 came from. There's also MERS, which is kind of been in the Middle East, and that was passed from bats to the dromedary camel and then to people. And so we do know that there's definitely this disease transfer that's going on back and forth, and it's just going to continue to get worse if this kind of trafficking continues, unfortunately. What I do understand, especially about coronavirus, is that there are certain receptors on the virus itself that allow it to attach and host itself in a human cell. And that is where the pangolin is thought to have the connection, is because the pangolin coronavirus had that same receptor that allowed it to host in a human cell. However, the virus that's in the pangolins is only like 90 to 93% similar. And so that's where they kind of think that maybe the virus from the bat, which is pretty similar to the human one, but lacked that receptor to allow it to host in humans, combined with the pangolin one and mutated in order to be this super virus, essentially, that could have all of these powers from the bat virus had, and then also be able to host in humans. So that's kind of the theory. Any virus, like chronic wasting disease that occurs in ungulates, definitely could mutate and become something that passes to humans.
When you start saying the receptors on the pangolin and like how they are kind of the bridge between the bat and the humans, the pangolin being the bridge because of the receptors, the mutation of the coronavirus, this seems like the biggest push for the need for animal conservation is a pandemic like this. Like, this should be like a telltale sign that we need government funding for exotic animal trafficking. Like, I feel like it's never been more obvious than now.
Right. And, those of us that have been kind of fighting for wildlife trafficking, enforcement and stricter laws and things like that, it honestly, in my mind, like, it was kind of like, oh yeah, we could get a disease, but it wasn't really anything that was in the forefront of my mind. It was more, I want to save these animals. I want to protect these animals. I care about them. Really, I thought impact-wise, what I was kind of pushing is like, oh, they eat ants and termites. Pangolins eat ants and termites. So you don't want ants and termites, right, people? That was kind of my, I guess, like, gimmick when people are like, oh, well, who cares about pangolins? Like, why do we even need them around? I was like, well, you don't want termites eating your house, so keep the pangolins. Which I think this is a lot stronger argument for people to say, like, hey, let's just leave those guys in the wild, because obviously when we mess with them, bad things happen.